and welcome. This is a webinar, so you will see just the presenters, but we have quite an audience that joins separately, and you will be able to ask questions in the chat feature. If you have a question, go ahead and do a chat, or you can also raise your hand on the Zoom call as well. So just to get us started, tonight we're going to be talking about preparing for a power outage. But first we're going to give an update on our ham radio operations with Dewey Cribbs. Dewey, I'm going to turn it over to you to get us started.
Thank you, Patty, and thank everybody. So we're going to do 3 topics, and my primary target here are not the hams, but people that participate in CERT with us, our partners, so to speak, ham partners, to let you know who we are, what we do in an emergency, and how we get ready. So who are we? It may surprise you when you hear the media talk about the role of hams in a disaster. It's usually people that are dedicated amateur radio operators, dedicated hams. They do all kinds of stuff that relates to being a ham, such as advancing radio technology and that sort of thing. We're not. We have a few electronic engineer types, but a lot of us haven't even had a course in physics. You see a list of careers that I know about. Some are retired and semi-retired. There's only one real amateur radio operator out of a whole bunch of us that I know of. Now the next slide. So we have 64 people listed on our roll, but that's a little deceiving. 18 of those are we haven't heard from in a long time. We've listed them as inactive. Leaves 46. In actuality, we get about 27 people week to week that actually participate in our roll calls and our conversations. Another 4 maybe on and off. Some of those are part-time residents, so they're just not available, even though they may want to. They will probably call in if they could. So what do we need? We need a minimum of 26, and that's going to be a very exhausted group of people. That would be 2 for each of the 10 sheds, and then 4 to 6 for net control at the station. And they'd be working a lot of hours. We'd like to have 60 to 70 during a major earthquake so that we can have multiple shifts and adequate coverage, especially in the neighborhoods. So we're looking for more people to participate as radio operators. Next slide. One of the focuses that I would like to leave you with is that our hams are team members. We don't operate by ourselves. We don't sit in a corner and wait for someone to give us a message to send into the station. We're walking around and moving around with teams to do surveys, rescues, medical health kind of events. And then we relay it into the station and become the eyes and ears of Bodega Bay Fire Protection District. Next slide. So how do we get ready? Well, from the time someone expresses interest, we start them with support for how to train to pass the FCC test. And we describe the type of equipment they're going to need. It's fairly cheap. And when they pass the test, we give them a 1-hour new ham course to get them rolling in the practical aspects of what they need to do. We continue to train. We have weekly nets, take 20 to 30 minutes. We have been last 6 months doing training tips during that time, 5 to 10 minutes. We do annual shed drills and special events. And Fish Fest, we have usually 22 to 26 hams involved over the 2-day period. Next slide. So have I got you interested? I hope so. So go to the BB CERT website, look for the button that says hands and look at the bottom of the page, and it says I'm interested, and click on there and we'll contact you. Thank you. Now we're going to Dave Blottie, power outage preparation. Go ahead, Dave.
Okay, thank you, Dewey. So power outage preparation. It's funny that we know that we're going to have power outages, but honestly, if you haven't received it yet, you'll be getting a notice from PG&E telling you about their smaller, shorter, smarter public safety outages. And there's actually a great deal of very good information in it. You ought to take a look at it. Go to that next slide, please, sir. Thank you, Ed. So I thought we'd start with lessons learned during the past fire season outages, and just go through a few reasons why we might consider wanting to have backup power for our homes if in the event or when a power outage occurs. So we know that refrigerators are going to need power, and they need it at least every 4 hours, for about 4 hours to keep your food cold. And don't forget to remove the ice dispenser from your door of the refrigerator if you have one of those that dispenses through the door. I found out the hard way. Freezers can keep your food frozen for up to 48 hours, however. So, if you're not concerned with your refrigerator food, you can use a little bit less, of your power supply to keep your freezer running without your refrigerator. Some gas appliances continue to work without electricity. We've learned gas water heaters, that surprised me. They continue to work because they have a pilot light that continues to work with the mechanical heat sensors that tell it when it needs to heat the water. So you end up with hot water. The exception to that are those tankless water heaters that need an ignition to go on because they don't use the gas for igniting the heater when they need it. Stoves need a match or a lighter as well, but they don't need electricity. You can just use a regular match or lighter. So the propane stoves I'm talking about. If you've got an electric stove, unfortunately, it's not going to work without some other power. Lights, televisions, radios, battery chargers, Wi-Fi connections, computers, printers, washers, dryers, dishwashers, coffee makers, coffee grinders, all need power to work. If they're an essential part of how you live your life in your Bodega Bay area home, you need some outside power for that. Ed, can you go to the next slide, please? And so continuing, smart devices like phones, tablets, Alexa, Ring. We're going to recommend that you, if you have not recently done it, go out and replace the batteries on those so they have the maximum life available to them when you do charge them. Garage door openers. You got to realize that your garage door openers are run on electric power. If you live in Bodega Harbor, where we are by our codes, our homeowners association codes, have an additional layer of the same siding we have on our house on our garage door. They are extremely heavy and not conducive to opening with muscle power. An electric opener is a very, I'd say, essential piece of equipment up here, and maybe for other areas as well. Yard irrigation systems don't work. Water treatment and water softener systems don't work. Jetted tubs, hot tubs, hair dryers, curling irons, electric razors, that sort of thing don't work. And if those are essential to you, then you probably want some backup power. But that's not only us, our communications providers systems also can run out of power, as we found out last year. So
Dave,
Comcast,
this is Ed. I have a question that came in for you. Vicky Valine wants to know, doesn't all Bodega Bay only have PG&E electricity, or are there some areas that also have access to gas?
We have PG&E electricity, or we have like the lab has electricity from somewhere else, but it's delivered to them by PG&E. So yes, now we do have propane gas. I'm not familiar with anybody here that has natural gas, if that's what you're asking. PG&E to my knowledge, does not deliver gas to this area because of it's too difficult for them to put the lines in and keep them reliable. So anyway, so communication systems, Comcast has assured the BBFPD Fire Protection District that they'll provide a backup generator for extended outages. And just as a FYI, if you happen to have satellite TV, including the satellite Wi-Fi, they will both work if you have backup power available. So when Comcast goes out, you can continue to watch the dish TV, and if you have their Wi-Fi option, you can continue to send your messages. So if you agree, you probably want some kind of standby power or backup power. There are a couple of possibilities for you. The two that most people talk about and consider right now are home standby generators and portable generators. I'll go over a couple of other options after we go through some of the differences and similarities of these two types. So home standby generators, those are those units that you'll see them in people's backyards. They have a large box around them, and they sense outages and automatically select the circuits that you want on in your house. You predetermine what you want to turn on with the power that you have on those home standby generators. They're installed by electricians. They're usually fueled via a connection to the house propane tank nowadays. Some people do have diesel tanks. Gasoline is not normally used because it tends to go bad, and both the diesel and the propane tend to last much longer. That's a permanent outdoor installation, which, by the way, means that there's a lifetime, useful life of the unit, because in our environment, as we know, anything that's got a metal box around it and is made of metal will rust in our air. We may need additional oil, operating oil in the unit when you're operating for long periods. Like last year, I'm afraid stories came out that people had not looked at their oil and when they were running for the multiple days last year. And when the oil ran out, the engine seized up and they were out of power. So again, that housing is weatherproof, but that doesn't mean that it is proof to our weather. The normal installation is of a home standby generator is significantly theft resistant because it's heavy, it's anchored to a concrete pad, etc. Now, on the other hand, portable generators have to be turned on manually, and so some of them have electric start, but a lot of them are still a pull cord type start, like your old-fashioned power mowers. So most are powered by gasoline, but some have a propane fuel option. And I've even seen some that have the natural gas, but I don't think that's one of the options we can take advantage of here. Usually they're stored indoors until needed, and then they're operated out of doors. They have to be operated out of doors because as they operate, they produce carbon monoxide. We don't want to have to call the chief's people in to revive you after you've fallen over from that carbon monoxide poisoning. You still, as with the others, you have to monitor the oil levels during prolonged use and add oil as needed. It needs a supplemental weather shelter for wet weather use. So you'll see later, I have a picture of the type of tent that you can get for the generators to put over them to be able to operate them outdoors during the wet times. And you will need a security lock and chain to prevent theft, or I guess need is a strong word, but we strongly recommend that if you don't want your generator to disappear, you'll get that lock and chain to prevent theft. Next slide, please.
We have another question that came in, Dave.
Okay.
Not many properties here seem to have solar panels. Is this because of the weather and less direct sunlight, more rapid deterioration of materials, or what?
Yes, it's actually that former. We have a fairly notable solar panel installation expert in our neighborhood, about a little over a block from me. And I've talked with him about it, and he said that they don't have panels yet that are so efficient that they produce usable amounts of power during our very foggy times like we had most of today. And so they don't usually recommend putting them in out here. If they do put them in, you have to have a greater number of panels that produce a lot more power than you need on a given day, and then the battery storage to reserve that extra power they produce for the days when you're not able to produce enough power. So let's go to the next slide then. So here's a sample of the general profile and cost of the home standby generators. I did my research on Amazon, but if you've been to Costco lately, you probably know that they have the same models at a slightly lower price over there than you even see on Amazon. So, but that's just the price to buy the equipment. Then you still have to get the permits, you still have to get the electrician to install them properly for you, and that involves modifications to your power panel, etc. So this is not the bottom line price. It's just to give you an idea of what the generator hardware would cost. Next slide. So the home standby generators usually sized to handle the maximum possible load. I did work for the federal government to help put in uninterruptible power systems for different sensitive electronic installations around the world. And we didn't put the equipment in. We would call in the people that manufactured these devices, which were essentially like standby generators. And what the sales guys would do is come in and stomp on the floor of the building and say, well, it'll hold about this amount of weight, and therefore that's the size generator or uninterruptible power supplies you need. But what a lot of the electricians will do is they'll look at your refrigerators, your dryer, your washer, your electric stove, etc., and they'll say, okay, in order to start this device, you need this many watts. And in order to start that device, you need that many watts. They don't, and they then say, in the worst case situation is that they will all start at once. And so therefore, they will come up with a very, a larger, tend to come up with a larger number than you'll probably ever use. But you can talk with them, and then, together you can come up with the right size to reduce the cost to a more reasonable level. Fuel consumption is lower for a smaller size generator. They have to turn, the pistons on the generators are a certain size, and they burn a certain amount of fuel each time they cycle. So the larger your generator, the more fuel it's going to consume, and the larger fuel tank you're going to need. And you definitely need professional installation to connect to your fuse box. You want a licensed electrician, because you want the system to disconnect you from the utilities power and connect you to the generator power, and turn on and off basically the fuses to the circuits that you want to light up in your house. So and that, to do that reliably, that's not there might be an electrical engineer or two among us, but I think even them, if they don't specialize in home electrical work, would concede that they probably should hire an electrician with the experience to do that. Let's go to the next slide.
Okay, so we have another, we have a comment and a question. Lee Ritchie says, my panels run all of my appliances. So he's saying his solar system is able to do that. And then Vicki Valine has a question. Would wind be a good collector for energy instead of solar?
Well, actually, I addressed that a bit later, but yes, wind is an option here. However, there are a couple of considerations that we'll go over, including whether the Coastal Commission will permit the size unit that you want, and the fact that they are known to be deadly to birds who cannot tell how fast they're spinning and try to fly through the spinning blades. Especially the larger the wind generator is, the more common it is to find a crop of dead birds around your windmill.
Okay, and then Richard Ogg raised his hand to ask a question, so I'm going to go ahead and turn on. Okay, Richard, go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we
We
can.
sure can.
Excuse me, can you hear me? Okay, all right, Dave, thank you very much. And I really appreciate the opportunity to speak a little bit on this. I've been in the electrical trade for over 40 years, and we installed, solar panels on this house quite a few years ago. And I also have a whole house generator system that is an automatic start system because I am a commercial fisherman and I leave for a long period of time and want to be sure that, my wife has adequate power when we have a failure. One of the main things that in terms of the safety aspect of these things is to be sure, absolutely be sure that you have a qualified electrician install these, as you're saying, Dave, which is essential. And the other thing that we need to consider is on the smaller generators that people tend to try to plug into their house or tie in directly, they need to be absolutely sure that they cannot feed back into the system of PG&E, because as an electrician who did transmission and distribution, the transformers do not care which way the power comes in. And if you energize the low side of a transformer, the high side becomes energized, and an individual who works on the line is then susceptible to a 12,000 volt voltage that appears on the primary side of that transformer. So these are things that really need to be addressed by professional electricians that understand and can help the homeowner here in Bodega. And I wish I was still doing it because I would help everyone I could, but unfortunately I'm a fisherman too. So thank you for the opportunity to say something.
Thank you.
Right.
And
thank you, Dick. And I used your services for quite a number of times before you moved on off that, and appreciate it. He's absolutely right. And we do actually have some slides on some information in the slides on not to to ensure that you do not light up the utility side. So,
so we have one more question that came in. Mark Burchell, he says, I use 40 kilowatts per month max. How do I know the size that's needed? Is that something he would learn when he went to buy it, or do you have some guidance?
Well,
on
when he talks to the electrician that he's going to use to install it, that would help him to determine the proper size. So it's your largest momentary load that you look at. So in terms of the portable generators, what you're seeing on the screen now are some samples of portable generators that are kind of around the spectrum. So if the way you have your home, your life put together around your power availability, and you've got a lot of things that don't require power, a smaller generator like this 2,000 watt generator, the orange one on the left, it may be sufficient. That's that 2,000 watt, 2,200 watts it's showing would be able to open your garage door for you. After the garage door is open and closed again, you be able to keep your Wi-Fi running. And they tend to use very little gasoline, but they do use gasoline, and I believe that's the only fuel that the smaller generators will run. Or I saw a comment earlier that there are some specialty fuels that don't have ethanol in them and therefore don't produce the plaque or the varnish, that will clog up your fuel distribution. On the right, that Furman is what I opted for, and it has the ability to run on either propane or gasoline. And as I said, gasoline will go bad if it sits. Propane does not, and so I bought it to be used with propane and bought a couple of extra propane tanks, runs a couple of days on one of those 5-gallon tanks in the fashion that I want to use it, which is not full time, has an electric start, and so on. You can see the prices. Oops. Yes, you can see the prices on them. Again, Costco has that unit for about half the price that Amazon is listing it at. So they are available. They're in the neighborhood. You can go look at them. They're not lightweight, but they, with the wheels and the handles, they're easy to get around. Next slide, please. So the portable generators can be connected to the fuse box, but are often used to connect extension cords to individual devices. They may be needed to open the garage door, take the unit outside for operation, check the power quality specifications. You should check the power quality specifications of the unit to make sure they're compatible with your electronics. Refrigerators, televisions, modems, etc. If they get too much disturbance of the electrical power signal, they will their circuit cards will burn out. So a power filter could take care of that to clean up the power before it's delivered to those types of items. Many have outlets, or they may have outlets built into them. Most of them do. I think all of them do. Mine has 20 amp, 30 amp, and 50 amp, and the various plug configurations, like the locking 20 amp cord, receptacle. They're usually less expensive to operate than the home standby generators because you can put them away for longer periods of time. You tend to store them in a garage or someplace like that, where it's covered, a shed, whatever that's covered, and more climate controlled, less exposed to the salt. Next slide, please. So let's go through some of the things: the extension cords, the locks, security locks, gasoline cans, preservative, propane tanks, and the generator weather cover. So next slide, we'll just see some pictures of these again off of Amazon, where they had lots of good pictures. So one thing I like about this type of extension cord, it had multiple outlets. It was a heavy gauge wire with a very thick cover over it, hard to abrase it to where you would get exposed, wires. And the clear cable, it has usually those have a light in them that let you know when you have power in them. So on this one, you can connect, I think, either 2 or 3 additional cords to it after you get it up to where you want to distribute your power. Next slide. This master locking system was recommended for them. Looks similar to bicycle locks. It just has a longer cable on it. So it would help to ensure that your generator would be there in the morning when you went to bed at night. Next slide. So I think about 100% of you have seen what a gasoline can looks like, but I thought I would put that up there just so you know what we're talking about. This is just a 5-gallon can, and that would be sufficient for the smaller generator, but the larger ones tend to take more gas, so you would size your gas can accordingly. And you're looking at the where the price spread they had there. $32.99 was that 5-gallon version. $244.99 is a very large one. I have to hope. But anyway, next slide. And then the stable is the most common of the gasoline preservatives. It'll let your gasoline last several months. And this one says up to 2 years, and that may be true. But what we like to do with our generators in the sheds is to run the gas out of them and put fresh gas in periodically. And the price is fairly nominal if you take a look at the price on there. Next slide. So when I was talking about the propane tanks, the one on the right, the 20-pound or 5-gallon, is what I have, but you can get larger ones. The problem with the larger ones is there's more weight to carry around when you are setting up your portable generator configuration. So I opted for several of the smaller ones instead of one of the larger ones, even though the economy of the the larger one is better on the tank. Next slide. And this is the weather tent. This one is Champions, but as I look through all the various models, they are all manufactured by the same Chinese company, and they all look the same. So, but the idea is, you see where the cord runs up under the tent. That is keeping the water off that electrical cord. So when you go out there to put fuel in and change the oil or add oil, you're not going to be electrocuted by the cord, the wetness around the cord and the other receptacles up there that would be able to suddenly see it was easier to ground through your wet body down to the cement of your driveway. Next slide. So operating instructions. Let me show you what I do at my place for these portable generators. And I think Dick Ogg might have been the architect of this list I have, but it happened before I bought the house. I just wouldn't be surprised if it was Dick, because it's very well done. Next slide. So in my house, we have it was originally handwritten, I typed it up, but there are two sets of instructions: how to turn the system on when a power outage occurs and how to turn it off when it's over. And the first thing it says is to go to the outside of the house and turn the main power switch at the top of the box off. That's the switch to the utility power. That way, when you do finally hook up your generator, you don't electrocute that electrical worker down the line. It tells you to turn off all of your breakers, because you don't want to blow the breakers when you connect the power from the generator. Then it tells you how to hook up the generator to the connection that we have built into the house that we run. In my case, we run a 30 amp cord over to it, and then it has a knife switch that you turn it on, and then you go back to the power panel, turn the breaker on that allows that power into all the switches, and at that point you turn on the switches that you want. So you can choose whether you want to run the washer and dryer, whether you want to run all your wine keepers and refrigerators at once. And it's basically the reverse when the power outage is over. And if anybody would like to have a copy of these, if you want to send me a message, I can make a copy and send them to you, but they would be tailored. You'd have to tailor them to your own house and own your own power panel. Next slide. And this is a picture of my power panel. So rather than trusting memory, we have a cloth tape on the power panel, and we've written onto the tape what each of the switches is for, including the main switch to turn off, and at the bottom, which unfortunately has been cut off in this picture, the switch to turn on the generator power. But I can provide a photo of that to you as well if you want to use that as a guide, but you would have to use your own configuration. Where it says hot tub now, we don't have a hot tub anymore. So, and I don't think you'd be able to run the 50 amp hot tub circuit from your portable generator anyway. Next slide. So somebody mentioned solar panels. Well, there are the whole house solar panels, and then there are the portable solar panels that you can take out when you have a power outage. A lot of these smaller configurations are great if you have battery packs that you charge your smaller devices with. They produce plenty of power for that. Also, we're going to shortly go to these some of these alternatives for power protect, for power during a power outage, and I'll go over another use for them at that time. Next slide. And don't forget, rather than spending your precious electric power on lighting, you can have solar-powered lights that you leave in your windows all day to charge themselves, and then use in your home, wherever you need them. Move them around to where you need them, so you can see to safely go up and down stairs to cook or to whatever you want to do. You don't have to burn even if you have LED lights. They do consume some power, which consumes some of your fuel, and you'll last longer if you have you know, a lighting, emergency lighting like that available. Next slide. So some of the alternative power backup power options are battery stored power and whole house solar power systems and wind power systems. And I'll talk about one other as well before we're over. So the battery stored power, Goal Zero is one of the manufacturers of those systems. I mentioned that because number one, they're recognizable as the people that manufacture those Yeti cups. I happen to use one. They keep your beverages, you know, cold and hot as needed. Sebastopol Hardware has the battery stored power Goal Zero units that you can go take a look at. They are very well made, and they come in various sizes to be able to handle your loads. Dewey has invested in one, and he's a believer in them. He wanted to make sure I had them in my presentation because he believes strongly in them. And they are rechargeable for longer outages. They sell a solar panel to go with theirs, but you can put other solar panels with them. They basically function as a backup generator, if you will. They can be powered by your generator if you had a smaller generator, and you can also power them via your vehicle cigarette lighter outlet. They do include power filtering. So when you hook your refrigerator up to them, you're not going to blow out a circuit card. The whole house solar power systems, they require you to disconnect from the power utility power when the power goes out in order to continue to use them. They require battery bank for low light and overnight power. Now that disconnection can be an automatic thing. So it's not as if you have to go out and find the switch and do it. The wind power systems, as we talked about, they require a battery bank for when the wind conditions are low. I know that's rare around here, but today was one of those rare days. Restrictions for using them along the coast due to coastal commission and in homeowners association areas as well. They're sometimes not approved. And they are noted for killing birds. You can find articles on that. It's just, it is a fact of their operation that the birds don't see them, or if they do see them, they don't realize how fast they're moving. And they kill everything up to bald eagles, golden eagles, etc., and then the small ones as well. Next slide. Fuel cell power systems are a very expensive alternative. So if you are one of our very wealthy residents out here and you want something that has no moving parts and can convert gas, either natural gas or hydrogen, and I understand now they can also burn propane, directly into electricity, and all that it emits are carbon dioxide and water. So they would be excellent. They're totally silent, so you're not gonna, your neighbors won't even know you turned it on. They are kept outside, but the way they're built, they would be much more durable than the generators with moving parts. And just as another alternative backup power option, some of the new vehicles, several of the new pickup trucks this past couple of years are equipped with generators on board, and you can use them in lieu of buying a portable generator if it's right sized. And then many RVs are also equipped with generators. Well, I think most RVs are equipped with generators. And even those that are not, usually the people that own them have added a generator to their configuration. They often can also contain refrigerator, freezers, and units that are propane powered. So you get multiple benefits from having the RV that you can bring over to the house and use it to power the rest of your house and be a backup for other devices in your house. Next slide. And that brings us to the down power lines presentation, and Chief Sean will present that. Take it away, Chief.
Dewey, there were a couple of things, or excuse me, Dave, I wanted to mention a couple of things from your presentation. Sometimes portable generators might have their own grounding device regulation or requirement. And please, folks, do not check your fuel and oil levels while the generator is running. Hopefully we won't need that tent to make things any better or to keep it dry while trying to do those things. Anyway, moving right along. Okay, now take a look at that picture that's in front of you. And you'll notice a set of very high wires, a lower set, and then obviously the cable and communication lines down there. This is quite common for Bodega Bay area. What you have is the higher voltage lines at the very top, and then you have a lower reduction line powering some of the houses and some of the lower transformers. Although for our sake, it is all just as deadly. Next slide, please. All right, we have a short video for you, and then what we'll do is we'll take a look at that, and then we will talk about a few more Bodega Bay specific items. One of the things that PG&E tells us as fire service professionals in the very early stages of our careers is that every single power line that we encounter is hot or energized until PG&E representatives tell us that it's not energized. So that is my first word of caution to everybody, is that all lines are treated as if they are hot, whether they are smoking, arcing, sizzling, or doing any of the common things you might think that an energized power line might do. So I just want to make sure that is quite well understood. Now, very specifically to the Bodega Bay, what I wanted you to do, and this is homework for after the meeting tonight, is please go outside your home. Look up or look down. And depending on where you live, you might notice that you have power lines that come in with a service drop to your house, or you might have the ground transformer, which is the green box down below. Now, not everybody is aware of those, but those are also very highly energized, and they help us by keeping the power underground and out of the way. But once in a while, cars come in contact with these boxes and they dislodge them from their foundation. And what happens is that box now becomes energized, and then so does the car. A number of years ago, several fire service folks were killed when they went in to be good Samaritans and helped somebody that had crashed into one of these boxes, because the car went through the shrubbery that was around it and they did not see the ground transformer. Something to keep in mind if you're in the harbor and or some parts of Serena Del Mar. So the other thing is if you go outside and you look up and you see power lines in the service drop and tree branches or trees that are close by, and you think that if those become damaged or fall in the wind, please report that to PG&E so that they may come out there and trim those things back to the proper distances so that they can maintain compliance. Obviously, that's one of the hot topics around the state these days as PG&E goes through its legal difficulties. And one final little note on that, when you were outside looking up and down to check where the power is coming in from, did you happen to notice your address? Remember, if you can't see it, neither can we. I'll give that, remove on from that shameless plug. All right, now that is the real simple piece I have. And again, we live in Bodega Bay, which is obviously a wonderful place. As Dave alluded to, it's not really very windy out here all that often. Facetiously, jokingly said, quite often power lines are interrupted by the tree branches that fall on them. So we have had our share of outages several times a year, in fact, or hell, even sometimes several times a month. Anyway, be cognizant of that, be aware of that, treat all lines as if they are live, and be careful and let us know if there's a problem. That is all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chief. We have a question for Dave. This question comes from Pat. Isn't it illegal to backfeed a generator into your electrical system without a transfer switch?
Yeah, I don't know if it's illegal, but people that do that are usually the people that did not use an electrician and may not be cognizant that they need to turn off the power to the utility. I've seen advice on YouTube and other online sources that say, just put your 30 amp circuit into your dryer outlet and it'll light up your whole house. It will, but it might, like we were saying, it might, put by the time it makes it through the transformer, it might be put in a 12,000 volt current down to some power worker that's trying to help you, and here you are going out and killing them. So I'd have to do the research to find out if there is a law that says you can't do it, but you should not do it. That's an amateur solution, and electricity at the level of whole house powering is a professional issue.
Okay. We have a hand raised by Dick Ogg. Just go ahead and
Yeah.
Okay, Dick.
Yes, am I unmuted?
Yes.
Okay, am I in? Okay, all right, thank you. I just wanted to just comment on that real quickly. In terms of the actual legality, we'd have to look at that to be sure, but I do believe it is illegal. The one thing I would like to say is that typically if a person does try to do that and does not shut off the main on their panel, what ends up happening is he's trying to energize everybody's house downstream, and it usually kills the generator. So that's the end result of that. It's trying to power everybody's home at the same time because it's essentially doing what PG&E does. But it still energizes the line within a certain distance from the transformer up above, and that's absolutely correct. It is extremely dangerous, so it needs to be done correctly and safely. So thank you.
Okay. And then Pat had her hand raised, so I'll just go to her. Okay, Pat, you're unmuted. Hello, Pat?
Did that make sense, huh?
I wasn't listening, I'm sorry.
Oh.
I think so, though. Wasn't.
Okay, so we have another question from Andy regarding a Comcast backup. Does this mean that if I connect my backup power to the cable modem, my internet will be active?
Well, I believe yes. I don't think they can just light up the Comcast for the fire station, but they've guaranteed the fire station that they'll provide them the signal. And I think in order to do that, they have to give it to all of us. Sean, I thought I saw you raise your finger if you want to interject on that.
Yeah, I do. The problem is there is a spot that the Comcast generator can plug in that's a short distance from the fire station, which will back power or back feed the firehouse for communications, but it will only power about a half a dozen very close in proximity boxes. So once the battery goes dead on the system, then even if you have your own power, the signal is going to be lost eventually.
Okay.
Which is one of those things that they're working very hard at the state level to require that the utility companies, specifically our communications, do these types of backups. Okay. Oddly, they weren't required.
So then we also have another question from Andy. Does a generator with inverter address the power filtering issue?
No, some of the inverters are not very good. Inverters create a virtual sine wave. They take the direct current and they create an approximation of a sine wave where It uses little steps of electricity to create the sine wave. And if the steps aren't fine enough, if they're not close enough together, then that creates the noise that disturbs the electronics, the sensitive electronics.
Okay. Joe Conway says, many of us have large propane tanks to heat our homes and to cook. I see 5-gallon tanks being used for the fuel. Can a propane generator be connected to the large 250-gallon tank?
The answer is yes, but you would have to have a kind of in addition to your pipe that allows it to provide that propane at a lower pressure than it provides it to the house. So it's not a filter, but it's a step down pressure reducer, if you will. So it's possible, but it's one more thing, and you have to maintain it when it's not in use.
Okay. Any other questions?
Actually, I had one more, Ed. And I wanted to exploit Dick Ogg being on the phone call, if he's still there, is that oftentimes in the coastal environment, we have what we have called in the fire service, the tracking across the terminals on top of the power poles, the insulators specifically where the wire comes close by. The salt will build up, and then when fog rolls in occasionally, or when it's just really high in humidity, what will happen is you'll see these little tiny arcs following across the top of the insulators, and we will get called out in those times saying, you know, we've got arcing lines, but we've found out over the years that it is just completely common. But I'm curious as to what else there might be out there that it might be called, if Dick's familiar with that.
Okay. So Dick, I've given you permission. So if you just want to unmute, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Chief, you know, when I first moved out here, this is, I think about 21 years ago, I noticed the same thing. And I've been in, you know, I've been involved in distribution and, medium voltage is what that's considered, 12,000 volts. The arcing that you see on those insulators is common because of the salinity in the air. And initially it was, you know, it was pretty frightening to me too, because I kept thinking, oh my God, we're going to have, you know, I'm going to have a transformer failure here at the house right above my home. But it is common, and we see it in the substation. The Salmon Creek substation just up the road from where I live here. It's you know, on a foggy morning, you'll see it all the time. So I guess your question was, again, was it normal, or is there other terminology for it? But that's basically what it is, you know, salinity in the water that causes the tracking on the insulators. And based on the height of the insulator, that's the height, or that kind of rate, you can tell the amount of voltage that is transmitted on the lines. So the bigger the insulator, the higher the voltage. And the normal ones in the streets are about, you know, 6 to 8 inches tall. Those are 12,000 volt, lines that are above our area here. And the ones on the substation are much larger. You'll see them. So I hope that answered the question.
It does. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dick.
Thank you.
So Dave, this is for you. Larry Handel says, could you clarify the issue of Comcast providing signal? Earlier, I thought someone said Comcast had to provide backup power for everyone. Then I heard it was for the firehouse and nearby buildings only. Can you please clarify?
I apparently misunderstood when the chief had and I had spoken about Comcast providing the backup power. I thought they were doing it for our area, but apparently they have a feed that is strictly to those items near those places near the fire station. So only those places would have that. They do have backup power on it, which lasted quite a while last year, but then we ended up with a couple of days without it. So I misspoke. So sorry about that.
And Patty, this one's for you. Will the presentation deck be available after the meeting?
Absolutely. We are recording the session as well, and it will be posted on our website and our Facebook as well. And the slide deck can be provided separately too.
Okay.
If there's no other questions, we want to thank you for your time tonight. And we always look forward to feedback, and so reach out to us. Thank you all and have a good rest of your evening.